No one in Europe even mentions the root causes. They demand only one thing: immediately stop the fighting, give Ukraine and us, the Europeans, a chance to breathe, to buy time, so they can provide just a little support, with weapons, with money, to the Kiev regime. That's it. We firmly insist on reaching a comprehensive package of agreements for a solid, stable, and long-term peace. And we must give credit to the current American leader. After returning to the White House, he really took on this issue, and in our assessment is sincerely trying to help overcome the conflict through political and diplomatic means. Of course, aspiration alone is not enough. And as our president said, if Europe decides to fight, we are ready for that. No one in Europe even mentions the root causes. They demand only one thing: immediately stop the fighting, give Ukraine and us, the Europeans, a chance to breathe, to buy time, so they can provide just a little support, with weapons, with money, to the Kiev regime. That's it. We firmly insist on reaching a comprehensive package of agreements for a solid, stable, and long-term peace, with strong security guarantees for all parties involved. And our negotiations with the U.S. president and his team are dedicated to precisely that: finding a long-term settlement to eliminate the root causes of this crisis. And we must give credit to the current American leader. After returning to the White House, he really took on this issue, and in our assessment is sincerely trying to help overcome the conflict through political and diplomatic means. We welcome that. Of course, aspiration alone is not enough. Practical steps are needed to eliminate the very root causes of the conflict, causes that the president of Russia and members of his government have repeatedly laid out. These are rooted in the unacceptability for us of Ukraine being drawn into NATO, contrary to the promises made over the last 35 years. As for the Americans, as I've already said, in our assessment, they are interested in getting to the heart of the Ukrainian crisis. And this was reflected during the meeting of Presidents Putin and Trump in Anchorage on August 15th. Mutual understandings were reached there that, for us, remain relevant and can serve as a starting point for a settlement. Recently, when President Trump's special representative, Steve Witkoff, was here, following his meeting with President Putin, both sides, the Russian and the American, confirmed the mutual understandings reached in Alaska. This is a very, very important result, because after Anchorage, there was a certain pause. Now here, in our negotiations with the Americans on the Ukrainian issue, I personally believe that any misunderstandings or misinterpretations have been eliminated. We are not harboring, and the President has been very clear about this, any aggressive plans toward either NATO members or members of the European Union. We are prepared to formalize the corresponding guarantees in writing, in a legal document, of course on a collective mutual basis, within the context of the approach I've outlined. So, but this, I repeat, is us, and we stand by our words. On the other side, a frankly militaristic frenzy reigns, and as our president said, if Europe decides to fight, we are ready for that right now. We have given our American colleagues additional proposals concerning collective security guarantees. We understand that when discussing security guarantees, we cannot limit ourselves to just Ukraine.
Continuation, given what Zelensky is saying, so far we're not seeing the willingness, but let's remember what all of this started from. It was back with the coup d'etat in Ukraine back in 2014, as well as the deception about there being a possibility to address all of the issues via Minsk agreements. But afterwards, in 2022, when everything was on the verge, when the Kiev regime, the Ukrainian regime, basically unleashed a war in the southeast part of Ukraine, we said that we would have to recognize the unrecognized republics. It would be better if you leave these people in peace and let them leave without Russophobia, without coup d'etat. Just withdraw your troops from there. Back then, they didn't want to do that, and after Istanbul, at first, they basically initialed those drafts, and then they basically threw them in the bin. And this is what we're seeing right now. They're basically refusing to finish this conflict via peaceful means. That said, we are seeing things, and we know there are signals, including from the Kyiv regime, indicating that they are willing to engage in some type of dialogue. The only thing, and I would like to say something that we've been saying for quite some time, we are willing to put an end to this conflict via peaceful means based on the principles that I outlined in July last year when I spoke at the Foreign Ministry of Russia. The root causes that brought about this conflict have to be addressed. Mr. President, the situation on the battlefront is changing day in, day out. We know that to follow everything almost in real time, talking to our heroes, to our soldiers, but the situation is changing on a daily basis. Our soldiers are getting ahead audaciously and steadily. As Commander-in-Chief, what's your assessment of the current state of affairs? I've just listened to the report by the head of the General Staff. On the whole, I can tell you that right after our troops expelled the adversary from the Kursk region, the initiative, the strategic initiative, to be more precise, is firmly in the hands of the Russian armed forces. What does it mean? It means that our forces are advancing along the whole line of contact. At some places, they are moving ahead faster, sometimes slower, but everywhere along the line of contact, the adversary is being pushed back. And most importantly, and we started with this, you said, and I said, that there were proposals to the Kyiv regime to withdraw their troops from those unrecognized, back then they were unrecognized republics, who didn't want to leave under the yoke of the Kyiv nationalists. By then, the Kyiv regime had been building fortified positions in the agglomeration of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, Konstantinovka. This was the most fortified region. So let's start with what is currently unfolding over there. Just recently, the head of the General Staff, the head of the group of forces, as well as the local commanders, the head of the brigade that I received at my office, reported me on having taken Seversk, which is an important settlement, and from there it's possible to move closer to one of the most fortified regions, to part of this agglomeration, which is Slavyansk. A little to the south from there, our armed forces active in the South Liman direction. The troops are in the city already. The battle is raging, and very soon it'll be taken. A huge percentages under our control, but the advancement is going to continue. I said that Konstantinovka is part of this agglomeration, and the battle is already there. More than 50% of Konstantinovka is under Russian control. I have no doubt whatsoever that this settlement is going to be taken as well. There was an important development, namely the taking of Krasnoarmeysk. Because from Krasnoarmeysk, you know, the competent level of the armed forces will have to make a decision on which direction to take, but this is a very good bridgehead to continue offensive operations. And to the south, northeast, there is the city of Dmitrov, which is also an important bridgehead, and it is completely encircled. I think around 50% of the city will have been taken by our forces. By now, the adversary did not get an order or the command to lay down arms. They're trying to break the encirclement, moving in small groups. There are undertaken attempts to take back at least parts of Krasnoarmeysk, in vain so far. The adversary is sustaining significant losses and seeing no success. Another group of Russian armed forces, East Vostok Group, is making great headway across Zaporozhye region, liberating one settlement after another. As you know, currently the battle is taking place in Hulai-Polye. The city is divided by a river into two parts. The biggest is on the opposite part of the river. This barrier has been bridged, and the battle is raging inside the city, but an important part of the group of force of Vostok is moving even further, liberating one settlement after another in Zaporozhye region. Moreover, safety and security zones are being set up in Sumy region, the city of Volchansk, in Kharkov region, as is well known. Currently, several weeks ago, Kupiansk was taken by the Russian forces. So far, our forces are not moving, but they are in control. The thing is, their most important task is to eliminate the group of the forces of the adversary on the left bank of Oskol River and to take another settlement, which is basically a hub, a transport hub, which is Kupiansk-Uzlovoy. There is a group of forces that is encircled there, 15 battalions, 3,500 soldiers who didn't get a command to withdraw either, and they have no chances whatsoever. They are heavily encircled by the Russian armed forces. And once it happens, once our units have completed their task, they will move further west. I'm confident that by the end of the year, we will have seen new successes by our armed forces, by our soldiers, by our warriors at the line of contact.